Good morning, everyone. Okay. So we are at the end of this chapter number 23. Most probably we'll start with potential gradient, right? Or we have completed it. Have we completed this one? Yes? Anyone from you, please respond.
Sir, done.
Okay, so can you please tell me how far we have completed? Have I completed this del operator? Yes?
Yes, sir. Del operator.
Del operator is completed. Yes? Del operator is completed or we'll start with it? Hello?
So start from del operator.
Okay, fine. So let us start our today's class from this del operator, right? Okay. So the first question to you all is, you might have all have been acquainted with this word operator and operand. Okay. So your previously when you were in school up to +2 level, you have been dealing with various types of operator like plus, minus, division, multiplication. Then we have the root overs, cube root. All these are nothing but they are operators. Okay. They are operators. That means when these operators are operated on some
Hello.
operand, for example, suppose I will say
Excuse
I
me,
want
sir.
to, yes,
Sir, I think we have done del operator.
you think, okay, fine. Is there anyone who is still in dilemma whether it is completed or not? Because I am teaching actually 2 classes. In the other class, I have completed this chapter in full. Uh, are you sure we have completed? We have done this.
We have discussed. You have not
Yes,
discussed its question, but yeah, I think theory part is completed.
even electron volt we have completed.
No, sir. Up to del operator, I guess.
Okay, fine. So, okay, let us do one thing. Let us means repeat this superficially, so that those who haven't understood this, they will be gaining from this class. Okay. So just I will take 5 to 10 minutes to complete this one. Then we will move on to the other portions and discuss some questions. Fine. So as I told you that there are basically various types of operators. Some operators they used to operate on 2 operands. So what is an operand? Operand is number, natural number, prime number, odd number, integer, decimal, anything. And when it is operated by means of an operator, it results in some answer or it results in something. So basically this A and B on which the operator is doing the work are known as operand, and this positive or this plus sign is known as your operator. So we have various types of operator. So some operators they used to operate on 2 operands, some operators they used to operate on a single operand. For example, your square root. So obviously in that case you are using only one operand to find the solution. So this is the basic idea about operator. Now obviously all these things that till now you people have studied, that is plus, minus, division, multiplication, logarithm, exponential, cube root, then you have what we call it as the I operator. So all these things, they used to operate on scalar quantity. But there are certain operators which are purely meant to be operated on both scalar and vector quantities. And among them, one of the most popular one is the del operator. Okay. So this del operator, it can be used in different ways. So if I am writing del f, okay, this is known as the gradient of the scalar f. That means when I am going to write del simply on the left hand side of a scalar quantity, then it is known as the gradient of the scalar quantity f. Okay, and in this case, this one results in a vector quantity. Similarly, if I'll write del dot f, and in this case you can see your f is a vector quantity. So always remember that gradient is always operated, or del is always operated on a scalar quantity in case of your gradient in order to find gradient. Similarly, your del is multiplied in a dot product to a vector quantity in order to get the divergence of the vector quantity. Similarly, I have another type of operation, del cross f. Over here, f is again a vector quantity which results in a vector quantity. So curl of a vector is written as del cross f, and remember, curl of a vector quantity f is always a vector quantity. Last one is your del square f, and this is known as Laplacian of a function. And this f, always remember that it is going to be a scalar quantity. So basically these two are going to give, this three are going to give you some vector quantity, and the last one is going to give you a scalar quantity. So in this way, we can operate this del operator in different modes to get different types of quantity. Because in vector calculus, sometimes it is necessary to convert a scalar quantity into a vector quantity. And for that, I have also explained in the class why sometimes we require the scalar quantity to be converted into a vector quantity. So in this way, we have to operate the del operator. And what is basically the del operator? The del operator is nothing but del is equal to del by del x, ax cap, plus del by del y, a, y cap, plus del by del z, a, z cap. Okay. Now, in the previous slide, we have already derived one relationship, and which says that your minus v, or v is equal to minus e vector dot l vector. So that thing can be written in terms of your del operator as E vector is equal to minus of the gradient of v, where v is nothing but the electric potential. So in other words, this del v is known as the potential gradient. Okay. So now let us move on to the next new thing that we will learn today, and this is the last thing that we will study in this particular chapter number 23. That is your electron volt. Okay. So what is an electron volt? An electron volt is a unit of electrical energy. Okay. So there are a number of units for electrical energy. Now, you people have heard about something known as watt. Watt is the unit for active power. You might have heard about something known as a VA, volt ampere, and this is the unit of your reactive power. Sorry, not reactive power, apparent power. And the last one is VAR, VAR, volt ampere reactive. And this one is the unit for reactive power. This one is for active power. This one is for apparent power. This one is for apparent power. And the last one is for reactive power. Okay. Similarly, we can also have some units like joules and calorie. Okay. For defining or to measure. Yes. Yes. Anybody wants to tell me something? Or we may have some units like, yes.
So what is active power, apparent power?
Okay. So apparent power, reactive power, and your active power. Okay. So just look over here. Let me give you a little bit idea. I am not going to the details about it, because when we will move on to chapter number 30, that is an alternating current, we will study all this thing in detail. But very simply, let me tell you, the power that is going to be consumed by a resistor is known as active power, and the unit of this active power is watt. Whereas the power that is consumed by a inductor, pure inductor, or a pure capacitor is known as reactive power. Okay, this has the unit VAR. Similarly, if I am having a circuit which is having a resistance in series or in parallel across any inductor or a capacitor, this is known as the total power that is going to be consumed is known as reactive power. Okay, so we'll study all this thing in detail afterwards. But for the timing, remember that your electrical power is actually divided into three types. One is the active power, the other one is the reactive power, and combinedly both of them results in apparent power. Okay, so this active power is actually very much visible. The work done by the active power is visible to us. That means we can see if the fan is rotating, then of course we know that some electrical energy is being fed to the fan, and the fan is rotating and it is doing some work. Okay, so that type of work is usually given in terms of watt. Whereas in order to rotate that fan, we require a magnetic field. That magnetic field you cannot see or you cannot realize in practical life. So in that case, the power that is used to create this magnetic field in case of this fan coil is known as reactive power. So obviously the fan is going to produce some active power, and of course it is going to consume some reactive power in order to create the electric field. So in combinedly, this fan is going to draw apparent power from the electrical source. Okay, so very simply I have answered this question, but when we will go to the chapter number 30, we will study all these things in greater detail. Is it okay? Okay. So now, what is this electron volt? Similar to the watt, similar to joules, similar to calorie, similar to your var, similar to your volt ampere, this electron volt is also a unit of electrical energy. And particularly this electron volt is utilized when we are dealing with electromagnetic waves, or rather I can say when I am dealing with some instruments where we make use of electrons, protons, or neutrons to do the work. For example, suppose in a photocopier machine, what you are actually doing is that they are creating a static surface on the surface of the A4 size paper. Okay, and when they are creating that static surface, some dust, black dust particles, which are known as the refill, which comes from the cartridge, they are going to present means going to be attracted towards this static surface, and when it passes through a hot roller, you are getting the imprint of the letters. So in this case, since over here you are dealing with some electrons or free electrons, so over there when I want to measure what is the energy required imprint on a paper, over there we may use the unit known as electron volt. Similarly, basically what it is going to do, it is going to filter out the dust particle, the coal particles that are present in the smoke that is coming out as a byproduct or as a polluted material. So in that case, you are applying a very strong electric field, and when this dust particles passes through them, they get charged and they are attracted to a center and they get deposited on it. So in this case, over here, as you can see, we are creating a very strong magnetic field, and we are using these charged dust particles to get attracted towards the center of the electrostatic precipitator. So in this case, rather than saying that the electrostatic precipitator requires 500 kilowatt of energy, we rather say that it is going to consume this much of electron volt. So in those cases where particularly where you are dealing with subatomic particles, or the work is done by some subatomic particles, over there we make use of this electron volt as the unit of electrical energy. Okay, so I hope everybody have understood. Now, what is this electron volt? Very simple thing. Suppose in a field, so there is a field over here, electric field, and in this electric field I have a point A over here and there is a point B over here. Now the potential difference between the point A and B, okay, so VAB in this case is equal to 1, is equal to 1 volt, let us say. Okay, so when an electron moves from point A to B in any path and the total potential difference across this point A and B is 1 volt, then we call the work done in moving the electron from the point A to B with a potential difference of 1 volt is equal to 1 electron volt. So when an electron moves from a point A to the point B where your VAB is equal to 1 volt, then we call the work done is equal to 1 electron volt. So obviously, as we all know that work done is equal to the charge into the potential difference. So the charge over here is equal to the charge of an electron. So electron multiplied with a potential difference, and the potential difference over here is equal to 1 volt. So in total, I can say the 1 electron volt is equal to the charge of this electron, that is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 multiplied with 1. So in total, I am going to get 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 joule is equal to 1 electron volt. I hope this is a very simple thing. Everybody have understood this one, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, so we have come to the end of this chapter. Now let us try our understanding by solving some conceptual problems. So one such problem is, okay, you can see this problem in your book 23.2. If the electric potential at a certain point is 0, does that mean the electric field at that point is also 0? Can anybody answer this question? So it is saying that the electric potential at a particular point in the electric field is 0. Now it is asking, is it always that the electric field at that point is also going to be 0? Yes, anybody? It is saying that Vp is equal to 0. Does that mean that every time your Ep is also equal to 0 or not equal to 0? Yes. Is this one correct or this one is correct? Who can say? And if at all you are going to answer this question, you have to cite an example. Yes. When your potential at a certain point in the electric field is 0, is it always that the electric field at that particular point is also going to be 0? Yes or no? Come on. Who can answer this? Not a single one. Tell me something.
No, sir. It's not necessary.
So it
Yes,
not equal to
you
0.
are absolutely correct. What is your name?
Sir, yes. Yes, Sahai.
Sai, you are absolutely correct. If it is not necessary that if Vp is equal to 0 at any point in an electric field, it is always that the electric field will also be equal to 0. It may be 0, may not be 0. Can you give an example?
Yes, sir.
Yes, tell me.
Sir, suppose there are 2 point charges of equal magnitude and same polarity,
Okay.
and at any point between those charges, the electric potential will not be 0, but the electric field will be 0.
Okay, you are telling the opposite thing. I am actually asking the potential is 0 and the electric field is not equal to 0. Okay, at least you have given a try and it is quite correct. So basically what happens, suppose there is a,
Sir,
you are telling that two
so then we
equal
can
charges.
take
Yes?
two. So then we can take two equal charges of opposite polarity.
Yes, that is what you need to answer. Very good. That's correct. So, okay, let me remove this one. You can see the answer. Just see the answer. So basically, you are going to have the potential at the point C is equal to 0. But at this point, the electric field is not equal to 0. And one of the most brightest example or the most beautiful example is the example of a dipole, electric dipole. Okay. So over here, if I am having two charges of equal magnitude but opposite polarity, then obviously in between this entire line OC is the equipotential surface. Okay, so let us see where is the equipotential surface we have learned. So over here you can see this is an electric dipole, and over here this line which is the bisector between which is the bisector of this plus and minus charge, this particular bisector plane is going to behave as the equipotential surface with a potential equal to 0. So in this example, as you can see, here I am having a positive charge and a negative charge of equal magnitude but opposite polarity. So naturally this OC is the equipotential surface or plane which is at 0 potential because it is at the midpoint of it or bisector. So naturally over here everywhere your VP is equal to 0 but your field is not going to be 0. Let us see why the field is not going to 0. We have already done this one. So as you can see that this one is going to produce a field in this direction and this one in this direction. Now what you will do, you will resolve them into components and you will see all the components in this horizontal components, they are going to add up to result in a resultant electric field. Whereas the vertical components of the electric field, they are going to cancel out each other's effect. So in total, I can say the electric field over here is not going to be equal to 0, whereas your electric potential is going to be equal to 0. Okay. So thank you, Sai. You have answered it correctly. Only little modification was required. Now, please remember this type of question usually comes in the exam. Okay. Now let us move on to the second question. Okay. This is the last question we will discuss. After that, I will mail you this chapter, right? So that by 19th, you will submit me the answers. So today is 17th. Oh, sorry, I have told you 18th. So by now, 2 chapters you might have completed. The only thing is left with this chapter. So today you will receive this chapter on your mail and try to solve these problems. 2 to 3 problems may be there. Solve it and solve it in an A4 size paper. Write down the question in red pen and answer it in some other color ink. Take a photocopy and convert it to PDF and send me over my email ID. The email ID you will get when I will dispatch the study material to your email ID. Okay. Fine. Now what is the next question? So the next conceptual question is, if the electric field at a certain point is 0, does that mean the electric potential at that point have to be 0? That's the opposite thing I'm asking. So the electric field at a particular point in an the electric field at a particular point is equal to 0. Does that mean the potential at that point is also going to be 0? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
No, it is going to be no. The answer is going to be no.
No, sir.
Okay. So if you are saying it is no, can you cite an example?
Yes, sir. Sir, for
Yes, tell me.
example, at any point inside a solid conductor.
Solid conductor.
Yes, sir.
Inside the solid conductor, the electric field cannot be 0.
So electric field
Actually,
will
you
be
mean
zero.
to say hollow conductor. Okay, let me explain why. You are correct, but you have used solid conductor, that is wrong. Now let us see. So I am having a solid conductor over here. So the charges are equally distributed throughout the entire volume. So naturally, if I am going to consider this point, okay, so I have to draw a Gaussian surface, and as you can see, the Gaussian surface is going to enclose some charge. So if it is going to enclose charge, then naturally the field is never going to be zero. Whereas if you would have said that it is a hollow conducting sphere, then the answer would have been correct. So these are the charges which are residing on the surface of the charged conductor, hollow charged conductor. So naturally, if I am interested to find what is the electric field at this particular point P, so for that I have to draw the Gaussian surface, and when I will draw the Gaussian surface, I will see that there is no charge which is enclosed by the Gaussian surface. So if no charge is enclosed, obviously your electric field is going to be zero. Why? Because Gaussian law says that charge enclosed is equal by epsilon 0 is equal to phi. And what is phi? Phi is nothing but E vector dot A vector. Okay. And in this case, since your phi is equal to 0, therefore definitely your E vector is going to be 0. But inside it, the potential is not going to be 0. Yes or no? Because if you remember, we have already done this one. So when we are studying about the electric potential at a point inside the sphere, we got the value as Vp is equal to Q by 4 pi epsilon 0. That means if I am going to have a charged conductor, okay, charged hollow conductor inside the electric field, inside the conductor, means inside the conducting sphere, the electric potential is going to be the same as that on the surface. So obviously on the surface it is never going to be zero. If that is the case, inside also the electric potential is not going to be zero. So in this case I can say the electric field is zero, but the electric potential is not going to be zero. So this is the right answer. Is it okay, or I will explain it once again? Is it okay, or need some more explanation? If there is anyone who has not understood this, I can repeat it once again. Okay, let me repeat it. So basically what is going to happen, you are having a conducting sphere which is hollow in nature. Okay, so you are having a conducting sphere which is hollow in nature. Conducting sphere, and that too it is hollow, means all the charges are on the surface, on both the surface of the conductor, both inside as well as outside. Fine. So in this case, the electric field, let us say we are going to consider the point P, which is at the center of this conducting sphere. So over here, the electric field is going to be zero. Why? Because we know that by applying Gauss law, we can find the electric field. And your electric field can be found out in a very simple manner, that if phi is equal to Q enclosed by epsilon 0. And what is your phi? Phi is nothing but, it is equal to EA, that is the electric field into the area of the Gaussian surface. So let us draw a Gaussian surface across around this point, which is the center of the conducting sphere. In this case, as it is hollow, I have already told you it is hollow and it is conducting, therefore all the charges are deposited on the surface of the conductor and nothing is left inside it because it is hollow. So naturally in this case, your Q enclosed is equal to 0. So if this one is equal to 0, therefore obviously your E is going to be 0, because A cannot be 0, because A is nothing but the area of the Gaussian surface that you have drawn. But the thing is that since phi is equal to 0 and phi is equal to E into A, therefore your E is definitely going to be 0. So in this case, we concluded that inside the hollow conductor, the electric field is equal to 0. Fine. So first part is over. Next part is whether the electric potential inside the conductors, means rather a charged conductor, is going to be 0. No, it is not going to be 0. Why? Because I have told you that the electric potential at any point inside the charged conductor, hollow conductor, is always equal to that on the surface. On the surface, it is equal to Q by 4 pi epsilon 0 r. So naturally inside also it is going to be the same. Now all these figures are not going to be equal to 0. So naturally the answer is that inside an hollow conducting sphere, the electric field is 0, but the potential is not equal to 0. Is it okay? So with this, we come to the end of this chapter. Is it okay or not? Or anybody having any sort of doubt anywhere from this chapter, please feel free. I'll explain it, no problem. Yes. Anyone with any sort of doubt? Okay, let us do one thing. Let us go through the slides. So over here, I have explained what is work done. First, I explained it in terms of mechanical terms. Then we converted it to electrical terms, and thereby we found out what is the expression of the work done in moving a charge inside an electric field. Okay, I am just going through the recap of all the slides. Now, the work done is of two types. One, the work done by the electric field. The other one, the work done by an external agent. So when the work is done by the uniform electric field, it is considered as positive work. That means if you are going to place a positive charge inside an uniform electric field, it is going to move on its own along the direction of the electric field. Similarly, if I am going to place a negative charge, it is going to move in a direction which is opposite to that of the electric field automatically. So in both the cases, the work is done by the electric field and it is considered positive. Now, when there is a positive work done, then there is a decrease in the potential energy. So this is all about this slide and this slide. Next, we learned about the conservative field and conservative force. Over there, we came to the conclusion that the electric field is conservative in nature and the electric force is also conservative. So over there, we learned the most important thing is that whatever be the nature of the path, the work done is going to be the same, and it is only going to depend on the starting and the ending point inside the uniform electric field. Next, we learned about the potential energy, and over there, I told you that the work done in moving a charge from one point to the other, irrespective of the path followed, is equal to the negative of the change, or it is the negative of the change in potential energy associated with the initial and the final points. Now, another important thing that is written in red color, whether the test charge is positive or negative doesn't matter, the general rule applies. The potential energy increases if the test charge is made to move in a direction opposite to the electric force. What does that mean? That means if I am having a positive charge and I am going to move it against the direction of the electric field, then your potential energy is going to increase. Potential energy of the positive charge is going to increase. Similarly, if I am going to move an electron in the direction of the electric field, then also the work is going to be done by an external agent. It is going to be considered as a negative work, and moreover, the potential energy of the electron increases. Next, we talked about the potential energy of 2 points. So plus Q is the point charge which is actually responsible for creating the electric field. So what we did, we brought a test charge from somewhere and placed it at any point, and we evaluated the electric field. So how we were, sorry, electric potential. So how we evaluated it? We evaluated it by first calculating the force experienced on the test charge. So that is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon 0 q by q0, sorry, q0 by the distance separating them. So force you have got. Next is, in order to find potential energy, we have to find the work done, because potential energy is equal to the work done. So we have to move this test charge in between some point A to B. So when we are moving it, then we can find the work done, and this work done is nothing but the potential energy associated with the test charge. But at the point A, I am going to have some potential energy, and at the point B, I am going to have some potential energy. So at the point A, the potential energy is equal to q0 by 4 pi epsilon 0 Ra, where Ra is the distance between the source of the electric field and the test charge. So in the box in red color, I have written this expression. So this is the general most expression for potential energy associated with 2-point charges. So Q, small q is nothing but the source of the electric field. Q0 is the test charge which we brought in order to find the electric potential, divided by 4 pi epsilon 0 into R, where R is the distance between the test charge and the source of the electric field. So over here, I have given you explained you the relationship between the 2-point charges and the potential energy. Next, we talked about several point charges, very simple things. And next, we studied about electric potential. So electric potential in a very simple way can be mathematically expressed as the potential energy at any point in the electric field divided by the test charge, or the work done, sorry. So this is the electric potential, and believe me, in order to find the electric potential, first you have to create an electric field, then you have to bring a test charge in order to test the potential at that point. But the best part is that this test charge is not going to appear in the final expression, because this is after all a test charge which is only brought to find the or evaluate the value of the potential at that point. But rather than electric potential, we in day-to-day life, we are more concerned about this electric potential difference. And what is that? That is nothing but the difference of the potential between 2 points. Okay. So in other words, we can say, if the work done in moving a charge, test charge, let us say, in moving a test charge from one point to the other, divided by the magnitude of the test charge. So this is known as electric potential difference. So this is how we have already derived all this thing. And last, we studied about equipotential surface. So on an equipotential surface, everywhere, every point is going to have the same electric potential. And believe me, even though it is known as a equipotential surface, so surface means everybody's mind, it will be a 2-dimensional plane surface. No, it is not the case. Rather, it is a 3-dimensional surface, or rather I will say an imaginary surface on which at every point is going to have the same electric potential. And the most important things about this electric potential equipotential surface is that no two equipotential surface having the same potential can intersect each other. Last, we studied about the potential gradient, and over here we derived an expression which is a very, very important equation, that is, your electric field is the negative of the potential gradient. So with this, we come to the end of this chapter. Okay? Is it okay? Any doubt? Yes.
Yes, sir, no doubt.
Everybody is silent?
No, sir, no doubt.
No doubt, yes. Okay, fine. So let me dispatch the notes to you. Okay. So let me dispatch the notes. So what is your group mail ID? Janaranjan? Is it your group mail ID? Nobody is responding, so no need of sending. Then you have not yet created your own group mail ID. If you don't create, yes. Okay, WhatsApp group, I have already told you that I will be sending all this on your email ID, group email ID, not on WhatsApp. I should not send it. Okay, I will send it for today, but it is not official. We should do it in an official manner, because I will be sending it from my number. That is not good. Okay, forget about it. You people till now, even after repeated telling you to create your own group mail ID, you have not created, so let you people suffer. Doesn't matter. Yes? No, actually, I have already sent it to the section ID, but the problem is that they are not sending it to you all. No. Okay, today only you create it and send it maybe by 4 o'clock. I'll dispatch all these study materials on that group mail ID so that you people can give your assignment by tomorrow max, right? Yes. Oh, you have already sent it? All of you? That's great. Thank you. Okay, fine, fine. Then it's okay. Then no need of sending the study material. Okay, so now let us move on to chapter number 24. Okay, so chapter number 24 is completely dedicated towards capacitors. And what is this capacitor? What are the uses? What are the theories, or what are the basic principles associated with this capacitor? All those things we'll study today. Okay, so what is a capacitor? Yes, who will tell me? Yes, I can ask anybody. Ashish Sahu, are you online? Ashish Sahu? Those who are not responding, let me. Okay, Ashish, then why you are not responding? Okay, Ashish, switch on your mic and tell me, what is a capacitor? Simple question. Ashish, what happened? Okay, Swaroop. Swaroop. Anisha Rai answered me that capacitor stores. Yes, yes, yes. Let me see. So somebody voluntarily answered capacitor stores electrical energy. Okay, fine. But that definition is
Sir,
very...
it is a pair of parallel plates having an insulator in between them, and both the plates are oppositely charged.
Okay. So any two conductors separated by an insulating medium is known as a capacitor. Many people are answering it correctly. Two conductors placed close to each other is known as a capacitor. Okay, fine. So rather in a very generalized manner, I can give 3 or 4 definitions of a capacitor. Okay, so let us see one by one. So the first definition you people have studied, okay, and this is the worst definition of a capacitor. So this is the worst definition of capacitor, and the definition says a capacitor is a device that stores electric potential energy and electric charge. Okay, that is correct. Now the other definition is any two conductors separated by an insulating medium forms a capacitor. Well and good. Third one, and one of the best definitions, is a capacitor is a circuit element that opposes a change in voltage. Okay. So one by one, all these 3 definitions we will focus on. The first one I told is not a very good definition. Suppose in an interview they will ask you what is a capacitor and you answer it. Okay, out of 5 marks they will give you 3 marks because you are not wrong. But that is not the best answer. A capacitor is a device that stores electric potential energy and electric charge. Arey my goodness, already the charge is present, then what it is going to, how it is going to store the charge? So this is actually not the correct definition or a definition in full. So rather, this one can be modified in a little bit. It can be modified a little bit, and the answer is going to be perfect. So how we will modify? A capacitor is a device that stores electric potential energy in its electromagnetic field. In its electrostatic field. So that is the best definition. Another definition is a very common definition. Any two conductors separated by an insulating medium. Fine. So I will take 2 conductors. Okay, 2 conductors I will take, and in between them I will place some insulating material like paper or rubber, something like that, or even air is also going to act as a dielectric medium. So this is going to definitely form a capacitor. Fine. And the last one, obviously this definition is the best one, but right now this explaining this definition to you in detail is a little bit difficult, but still I'll try to explain you. A capacitor is a circuit element that opposes a change in voltage. Okay, fine. So one by one we'll study. Okay, so the first one I have corrected, that a capacitor is a device that stores electric energy in its electrostatic field, and the electrostatic field is going to exist between the 2 conductors. That's it. The next definition is based on the construction of the capacitor, that is also equally good. Any 2 conductors separated by an insulating medium or dielectric is going to be a capacitor. Can you give one practical example? You people have seen many examples of capacitor, many examples in your everyday life, in the environment, everywhere there is some sort of capacitor. Yes.
In fan capacitor is there.
Yes.
In fan capacitor is there.
Okay, fine. In fan there is a capacitor. It's well and good. In every electronic circuit, the use of capacitor is there. Other than this capacitor, can you tell me some other examples? Some other examples? Yes. Now let me show you something which is going to form as a capacitor. Every day you are seeing, but you cannot confirm that it is a capacitor. Now on the pole you are seeing conductors or wires that are running like this. Yes or no? So these are 2 conductors, and these 2 conductors are separated by some distance, and this distance is filled with air. Okay, so this is going to form as a capacitor. So the conductors that runs or the wires that runs on the poles, okay, they are going to form a capacitor because The conductors, obviously they are conductors, and in between them there is some gap, and inside this gap there is air, and air is an insulating medium. So naturally it is going to form a capacitor. Next, another example let me give you. So you all are having some set-top box, okay? In the set-top box, you are going to have a disk antenna. From the disk antenna, you are getting a LNB box, okay? That is the responder. From the LNB box, the wire comes and it is fed to a set-top box like this, okay? This set-top box is going to amplify the signal that is received by the disk, and it is going to be fed, filtered, and then tuned to give you some picture and audio. Okay, so that cable which is connecting this LNB unit to that of your set-top box is also a capacitor, very long capacitor. Why? Because if you have a spare one or a waste piece of cable, you will see that inside it there is a copper wire. Over this copper wire there will be some insulation material, which is usually a PVC material, and above this PVC material there is a wire mesh, aluminum wire mesh, and above this aluminum wire mesh there is another black insulation. So inside it you are going to see a copper wire like this, okay, and outside this or surrounding this copper wire is a thick insulation, white color insulation. It is usually a PVC material, and PVC material is an insulator. And above that you are going to have a mesh wire made out of aluminum, okay. So aluminum is a conductor, copper is a conductor, and in between them there is a presence of PVC, which is an insulator. So in this way, this cable is also going to behave like a capacitor. Got it? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Now, so first definition, I will explain once again when we will go deep into the subject. This I have already explained. Now let us move on to the third definition. A capacitor is a circuit element that opposes a change in voltage. Very simple thing. Now this particular definition you will use when you will go to your next semester, third semester. You will study a paper on circuit theory, and over there you will see how this capacitor is going to oppose a change in voltage. But before that, let me give one example through which you can very well understand what do I actually mean by saying it opposes a change in voltage. Okay, let us come back to that set-top box. Okay, so this set-top box is going to be powered by means of a charge or by means of a rectifier like this. You insert it into the wall socket, and there is a red light which is going to glow. Yes or no? Have you seen it? So those who are having a Tata Sky, they must be having a charger like this. It is actually not a charger, it looks like a charger, it is actually a rectifier, which is going to convert the AC from the wall outlet to a DC voltage. So as you can see that when you will plug it on, this red indicator or power indicator is going to glow, and it is going to power your Tata Sky set-top box, right? Now the moment you will switch it off, if you will switch off this Tata Sky set-top box, the charger, the light or the indicator, power indicator in the charger is actually not going to diminish, or it is not going to the light will be still present for some time. Have you noticed this thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you tell me why it is so? It is because
there are capacitors,
yes, that
and
means
capacitors are letting that light glow
Yes.
for some more time.
okay, that's correct. Now what is actually happening? The moment you close the switch, you switched on, okay, this light is not going to blow out. Okay, the moment you switched off the switch, the voltage is equal applied is equal to 0. Previously it was 230 volt was applied to the charger, okay, and suddenly you turned or switched off the set-top box. So naturally the voltage that is available to the charger is now 0 volt. But as I told you, there is a presence of capacitor, and this capacitor, what it is actually going to do, it is not going to tolerate this sudden change in the voltage from 230 to 0 volt. Okay, it is rather going to oppose, but it cannot oppose it for time infinite. Otherwise, and then we would have been getting power every time. So the moment the switch is switched off, the voltage applied comes down from 230 volt to 0 volt, but the capacitor is not going to tolerate this change. Rather, it is going to decrease the voltage slowly. So that is why it is known as a circuit element that opposes a change in the voltage. Okay? So I hope everybody have understood. Yes?
In LED lights, it also happens.
No, LED light, it never happens because LED is a diode, it cannot happen. But your LED light is powered by a circuit, and that circuit itself is containing a capacitor. I'll show you a circuit. Let me tell you how the circuit is going to look like. So basically what happens, what is there inside the driver circuit of an LED? So you have this AC source. From the AC source, it may come to a capacitor, it will come to a transformer. The transformer will step down the high voltage of 230 to, let us say, 15 volt. Now the two ends of the other end of the transformer will come and it will be fed into a diode bridge. It will be fed into a diode bridge for rectification. And after rectification, you require filtration. So for filtration, you require a capacitor like this. So this capacitor is going to store the charge for some time. Okay, or this is the one which is going to oppose the change in the voltage. So here you are going to have the LED lights, and these LED lights are going to be powered by this diode bridge, and across this diode bridge and the LED light there is a capacitor. And when you switch off the supply, even if there is no supply to the diode bridge, but still then the capacitor still is going to hold the voltage to some extent, and it is because of this the LED light is going to glow for some time. Got it? Is it okay? Actually, LED light by itself is not going to give the is not going to glow by itself unless and until it is not given some power. And actually in this case, even though you are switching it off, the capacitor is actually providing the necessary voltage for some time for the LED to glow. So you mistakenly consider that the LED light is going to glow. No, that is not the case. Okay, so I hope, what is the time? Oh, it's already 12. So we'll stop our class over here. On Wednesday, we'll meet with this one. So please be online. So by 4 o'clock, please make a group mail ID and please dispatch it to my email ID. Or in the WhatsApp group you send it, I will send the study material. Okay, you want my email ID? Fine, no problem. Note it down. Noted? Okay, fine. Okay. Have a nice day.
Good afternoon, all of you.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
So, in the last class, I think we have completed interface, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Hope you all are doing well.